One thing I was going to ask you too is because when you look at a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about and like that mind map in particular, there, there's a there's a a thread which runs through just about all of it, I guess, and that's this whole idea of being creative, isn't it? You know, like
Yes.
and also sort of breaking free of a lot of the traditional constraints and so on, which have been built up over the last few hundred years around, that's come up to consumerism and all the assumptions that have underpinned that, false assumptions largely.
Mm, mm.
So that creative thread is something that I think maybe we also just need to sort of think about in a more of a conscious sense too. Not so much about, it being a functional area, but maybe it's sort of that we sort of develop a process around it, perhaps, or try and put some shape to what creativity, might look like, or how you access creativity, more like a methodology, maybe. I'm not sure, so.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm not sure right now, uh, but I can certainly give it some thought.
Mm.
And you're quite right. It's something that has to go right through. I don't think it's going to be something that is going to be too definitive. Um,
No.
I think it's like we both come up with the why questions and the what questions, and
Mm.
I think it would be something along those lines.
Mm.
Um, and but first we've got to be clear what creative is, and maybe let's chat what comes spontaneously now.
Mm.
Um, you know, because if one looks at historically what you and I guess, or certainly
Mm.
you talk about creative, it means you like making something from original thinking.
Mm. Mm.
So you're going to do a creative painting. Perhaps it's going to be an original, perhaps concept or idea of what you want to do.
Mm.
Um, I don't know.
It's,
Can you add to
it's
that?
interesting, isn't it? Because when you look at things like music, for example, which is a creative art, it always fascinates me how some, like songwriters, meaning not someone who just writes the lyrics, but also, puts the music to it, how some of them start with the lyrics and then add the music to it. And yet there's probably an equal number of them who start with the music and add the lyrics to the music, sort of thing,
Right,
So,
right.
but it's it's just about how different people sort of prefer to create, I guess, isn't it? And maybe the same thing applies like to your writing. I mean, how do you write? Do you sort of, come up with the sort of a theme and then research it, or do you, when you write, do you sort of sit there with the theme and then map out like the chapters that you think might be part of it, and then sort of use that as the framework to go down, or
No,
how do you?
what I do is I let's say I've got an ebook to write or an article.
Mm.
Um, I throw around in my head, words, or I just go randomly searching the internet and just looking at sort of people's websites just at random.
Mm.
Um, and I know why I do it. And the reason I do it is to try and keep my active mind active while I allow intuition to
Yeah.
come into the picture.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because whatever I come up with, literally 99% of the time, was like an aha moment. Okay.
Yep.
And I
Mm.
couldn't wait to get to write it down.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I might have been looking at something, 180 degrees in another direction on the website, but
Mm.
that my mind, my conscious mind was looking at that, and that
Mm.
was way. So I guess other people might do it in a meditative stance. I don't come up with creative ideas in meditation. Um, so that's how I do it. So I guess what I'm saying is that for me, intuition is creativity. Can you add?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The because I find, like when I'm in the zone, and that's the creative zone, it's
Yeah,
almost as if you just sit back and observe it all happening, isn't it? Like
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. I agree with you.
yeah,
You know, when I'm writing and uh, perhaps she wants to go for a walk or lunch or whatever, and all I have to say is I'm in the zone.
yeah,
Okay, and
yeah.
I know that if I get up and go to the bathroom or go for a walk, it's lost. It's
Mm,
gone. You know,
mm, mm,
you've got to keep using it and keep going and. Yeah, in the zone. That's certainly,
mm.
uh, yeah, and that starts also spontaneously. You know, you're perhaps writing from just your logic and so on, and then it starts flowing. It's almost like you go into a sort of an unconscious state,
Mm.
and it rolls.
For
But
me, I
you know,
always have to have a few prerequisites. Like I have to make myself comfortable. I normally have music on as
okay,
well. I often have a candle burning.
okay.
So there's those sort of things that I just set up the atmosphere and the environment, and you know, generally, mostly, then you just get into that zone and it just starts to flow. So
Yeah, that's interesting because mine is since I've moved my desk um, and I'm now looking at my garden.
yeah,
uh, I stare for ages. I've got some beautiful plants, but also currently beautiful flowers,
mm.
and they probably the most beautiful that I've managed to grow in my life, quite honestly.
Wow,
Uh,
okay,
in especially in such a small contained area, it
mm.
becomes like an enormous area,
Yeah,
uh, if you know what I mean. And
mm.
so I tend to just stare, like in a daze. That's sort of
Mm.
my environment,
Mm. Mm.
and that works for me in a sort of a daze, I guess. Uh,
Mm.
so
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. But I could see how that would work for you. Actually, I really can. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, but, yeah, creativity. I think is probably going to combine those things that we've just spoken about. You know, whether we're talking about branding a name or a branding a phrase that we're going to own. We
Something
probably
comes to
use
mind.
our yeah.
Something comes to mind in terms of that process. Like it just came to me just now. But I mean, if you say when you're looking at the screen, because invariably most of the stuff's done on a screen, or even if it's done with a notepad and a pencil,
Mm.
essentially your focus almost goes down to 1 square foot, doesn't it? Or
Yeah,
similar
sure,
size.
sure. Yeah.
And it's sort of interesting how whilst your focus in a physical sense narrows, the process of narrowing simultaneously, and this is the sort of a paradoxical sort of statement, the process of narrowing it down to say 1 square foot, for argument's sake, basically opens up a whole panorama, doesn't it? Yeah, quite a limitless panorama,
Right.
and
Right.
and and the thing is that like there's a saying in Zen, I can't recall the exact words, but in the essence of it is that the void, like that limitless infinity, and the physicality, that 1 square foot is the 1 square foot becomes infinity. So it's like this transference, and also vice versa, that infinity, you know, narrows
Yeah.
down to that 1 square foot sort of thing. So it's a sort of a becoming type thing.
Mm,
I need to explore that a bit further because I haven't described that at all very well.
No, I'm following you. No, I'm
Yeah.
following you because it links with the term that we use is the the spiritual aspect
Mm.
in according to our definition.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Mm.
so yeah,
Mm. But anyway, it's sort of fascinating, isn't it, when you sort of think about it in that sort of context? Because a lot of people, or like when you look at a lot of the traditional writing, or not traditional, when you look at writing around the creative process, it's almost like something that just sort of happens down there in front of you or over there, and a lot of them will just describe creativity as, existing knowledge, and then you just sort of make different connections between that knowledge and come up with a different outcome. Whereas I think it's much more profound than that, actually.
yeah,
Much more profound. So, uh,
yeah, yeah. I agree with you.
yeah. Uh, so I should think about that a bit further. Maybe I'll do a, not maybe, I'll put some thoughts down on paper, on a PowerPoint presentation or something around that, I think.
Yeah, I think we mustn't overthink it, okay? Because
Mm.
it's not a logical process.
No,
Um,
it's not, is it? It's not a logical
yeah.
process at all. Yeah.
So I think the fact that we moving towards intuition and spontaneity,
Mm.
um, and a zone, and I think we're doing the spiritual without talking about the spiritual.
Yeah, it's almost like a cascading effect, isn't it? Like there's this sort of initial sort of catalyst or spark,
Mm.
and that sort of flows into a broad sort of field of possibilities, and then as you sort of form those ideas up, they sort of crystallize down into something more concrete, don't they?
Yes,
It's all,
yes, they do.
it's, mm,
Yeah, because
mm,
then it communicates your whatever mind that is, whether it's the subconscious or superconscious, it starts communicating with the conscious mind.
yeah, yeah.
And then when you that's the flow, that's is when they're all in the same zone together,
Mm. Maybe
Uh,
that's how, like the process, like how planets are formed. Like you've got this big, cloud of dust, and something energy initiates in it, and it gets movement, and then all of a sudden it starts to crystallize, and out of that, you get planets and moons and asteroids and stuff like that, isn't it? They sort of materialize out of the cloud.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Fascinating. Hmm.
it is.